Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to do a deep dive into something super interesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one.
It is, we're talking about the affect heuristic. Have you heard of this before?
Yeah, definitely. So this is basically like a mental shortcut that our brains use to make quick decisions.
So it's like instead of like logically thinking through everything, we just kind of go with our gut.
Right, exactly. We rely on our gut feelings, like whether something feels good or bad
Okay, that makes sense.
to make those judgments and decisions.
So is this like a good thing, a bad thing? How do we think about this?
Well, it can be both, actually.
Okay,
I mean, obviously it's efficient.
makes sense. Yeah,
Like you don't
it's a
want
switch
to
to
be
percent.
analyzing every single
Yeah,
decision.
yeah.
But it can also lead to biases and sometimes those gut feelings.
Lead us astray.
Exactly. Lead us astray.
Like choosing that restaurant
Yeah.
just because you're friend.
That looks amazing, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's terrible.
it's terrible food.
Totally.
But yeah, so researchers have been studying this for decades.
Oh wow.
And some of the earliest work that really sort of hinted at the affect heuristic
Okay.
came from studies on gambles, believe it or not.
Gambles. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So like people would consistently overvalue gambles
Oh, really?
with a small chance of winning a lot of money,
Okay.
even when like other options offered slightly better odds.
I see.
Like
So
this,
they were drawn to like
with potential for the big win.
that potential big win, even if it was
Exactly.
statistically less likely.
Exactly. Yeah, and they weren't even aware
We
really of how their emotions were affecting their
their
own
choices.
choices.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, so this kind of showed that our emotions could sometimes override,
Logic.
yeah, logic, exactly.
So how did they start to connect that with the affect heuristic?
So a key insight came from like looking at how we perceive risks
Okay.
and benefit.
Okay. So how we uh, view those two things.
Right, and
Yeah.
and researchers like Slovic and Fingetain,
Okay. Yeah.
they discovered that we often see things we like as less risky
Okay.
and things that we dislike as more dangerous.
Even if
Right,
that's
not true.
even if the statistics don't actually back that up.
It's so interesting,
Yeah.
like how some people are
Yeah.
terrified of flying, but driving is statistically
Like way more dangerous.
way more good. But it's that fear.
Their fear trumps
Yeah,
the facts.
that's so interesting. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, and there were some studies that really like nailed down this link between our feelings
Yeah.
and how we see risks.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. One study I find particularly illuminating focused on airport safety.
Airport say okay. So this is like TSA and stuff.
Yeah, so they asked people how much they would support purchasing new safety equipment
Okay.
and framing the benefit as saving 98% of 150 lives.
Garnered way more support than just saying it would save 150 lives.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Even though the
I think
numbers
right.
are the
The
same.
numbers are literally the same.
But that 98%
Yeah.
feels
Way better.
more reassuring,
It does feel more reassuring.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I think it's because percentages, they kind of tap into our desire for certainty.
For certainty. Okay.
Yeah,
So like a sure thing
Yeah, a sure thing.
versus a maybe.
Yeah, percentage feels
More concrete.
better.
Concrete. Yeah.
Whereas like a raw number might trigger those what if anxieties.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow, it really makes you realize how much like our emotions are
Yeah.
shaping how we see the world.
Even when we think we're being totally objective.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not limited to risk perception either.
Okay.
The effect, heuristic colors, like all sorts of choices,
Interesting.
from health decisions to purchasing decisions.
Okay, let's talk about purchasing decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know I get tricked by this all the time.
Oh yeah, for sure, me too.
So think about like buying a warranty
Okay.
on a car.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the salesperson might play up your fears.
Yeah,
Like what if something goes wrong?
totally.
This warranty gives you peace of mind.
Peace of mind, yeah.
Suddenly you're more willing to pay extra.
Even if it's not worth it.
Right. Even if statistically it might not be worth it.
I see.
But you feel better.
You feel better, yeah.
Yeah. Or how about those impulse buys at the checkout counter?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like that candy bar.
The candy bar.
That's strategically placed right where you're waiting.
Yeah.
They're banking on that treat yourself feeling.
To override all logic.
Exactly. To override any
Yeah.
logical considerations about your diet or your budget.
It's like they know how our brains work.
They do. And they're using it against us.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And here's the thing.
Okay.
Research shows that even when we try to be more analytical,
Okay.
our feelings can still subtly sway us. So like even if I'm like really comparing
Yeah.
prices and all that stuff,
Yeah.
it's still
That initial emotional response can kind of linger.
it's still there, yeah.
Yeah. This reminds me of the work of Daniel Kahneman.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, he talks about System 1 and System 2 thinking.
Can you remind us what that is?
Yeah, so System 1
Okay.
is our fast, intuitive emotional system.
Okay.
So it's the one that makes those snap judgments based on gut feelings.
Got it.
And System 2 is our slower, more deliberate analytical system.
Yeah.
The problem is System 1 is often in the driver's seat,
Especially when we're tired.
especially when we're tired, stressed,
Stressed, yeah.
faced with a lot of information.
Yeah.
So it's like we have these two
Competing systems.
competing systems, yeah, battling it out in our brains.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And the more we understand
How they work.
how they work,
The better.
the better equipped we are
Yeah.
to make those conscious, informed choices.
Rather than letting our emotions just
Take over.
take over.
Yeah, and speaking of making conscious choices,
Yes.
one fascinating area of research is looking at how we evaluate things.
Okay.
So, like, whether we consider risks and benefits together or separately.
So like if we think about all the pros and cons at the same time
Yeah,
versus like each one individually.
exactly. And what's interesting is that the affect heuristic
Okay.
seems pretty powerful regardless of whether we evaluate things together.
So even if I'm being like super analytical and
Yeah.
like comparing
It's
options,
side by side, it can still
my emotions can still
sneak in there,
mess it up.
mess things up. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So it highlights just how deeply ingrained this heuristic is. However, some people seem to be better at resisting.
Those
Yeah, those emotional tugs than others.
interesting. Okay.
Studies suggest that individuals who are really good at overriding
Okay.
those impulsive System 1 responses.
So they can like
Yeah, they're better at
stop themselves.
engaging their system to that more rational and analytical
More rational.
part of their thinking.
So some people just have like a stronger
Yeah, a stronger mental muscle.
for
I mean,
resisting
they're resisting those
the emotional impulses.
emotional impulses. Yeah, they can pause.
Pause, reflect,
And
and
consider
the facts and logic,
even when it's hard.
even when their emotions are screaming something else.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Those emotional responses aren't always wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes our gut feelings are spot on.
Okay, so then how do we know
Right.
when to trust our gut and when to question it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a
This is complicated.
balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the more we understand
This heuristic.
this heuristic, the better equipped we are
to make those
to make those judgment calls.
judgment calls. Okay.
Yeah.
So is this just a human thing, or do other animals experience this emotional tug of war too? Well, there's some really interesting research that suggests
Okay.
the affect heuristic might have deep
Evolutionary roots.
evolutionary roots. Yeah.
Wow.
So there was a study with rhesus monkeys
Monkey,
that showed they had a less is more preference.
Less is more. Okay.
Yeah. So they would choose a single grape
Okay.
over a grape paired with a less preferred vegetable.
Wait, so they would rather have less food.
They would rather have
That's so weird.
less food if it meant avoiding something they didn't like.
Oh, that's so interesting. Why
Yeah.
would they do that?
So it suggests that even in non-human primates,
Okay.
there's this tendency to like simplify complex choices
I see.
by just going with what feels good in the moment.
Wow.
And you can imagine how in a world full of potential threats, like quickly moving towards
What it feels good.
what feels good and away from what feels bad,
Yeah.
might have had real survival value.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so perhaps it's an ancient strategy
Like a survival strategy.
for navigating a complex world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so interesting that monkeys can teach us about like
Yeah.
our own decision making.
It really highlights the power of this affect heuristic. It's this ancient,
Yeah.
deeply ingrained
Yeah.
mechanism that's been shaping our choices
For longer than we
for far longer than we realize.
realize. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for our listener?
Yeah.
For you listening right now?
Right.
What are the key takeaways from all of this research?
So I think the first takeaway is awareness.
Awareness.
Recognizing that our gut reactions aren't always reliable,
Especially in like high stakes situations.
especially in situations with high stakes, is crucial.
Yeah.
We need to understand that these intuitive judgments are happening all the time.
Whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, whether we're aware of them or not,
Wow.
right? So
Yeah.
we need to start paying attention
To those gut
to
feelings.
those gut feelings.
And asking ourselves.
Yeah, and asking ourselves, like, is this feeling
Leading me to the best choice.
leading me to the best choice, or is there more to consider?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Okay, I like that.
And the second takeaway is the importance of engaging our system, too.
Okay, so that's slower, more...
That slower, more deliberate, analytical part of our thinking.
Record of our brain, yeah.
Right. And the more we practice
And bring it.
using it, the better we become at recognizing
What are our emotions?
when our emotions are kind of taking over.
I'm taking over and making poor choices.
And making those more deliberate, informed choices.
So it's like
Yeah.
building a mental muscle.
It is like building a mental muscle.
The
The
more
more you exercise
exercise
those analytical skills,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes
spot
to
those
spot and counteract
emotional biases.
those emotional biases. Yeah.
That's great.
But it's not about suppressing
Our emotions entirely.
Yeah.
They're an important
part of who we are.
part of who we are.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance.
That balance, that sweet spot.
Where we can...
Yeah, where we acknowledge our feelings.
Yeah.
But also
Bring in our rational minds.
bring in our rational minds into the equation.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's about being more
Yeah, it's about becoming
more conscious.
deliberate
More deliberate in our decision making.
in our decision making. Yeah.
And it's not just about making like better decisions.
Okay.
It's about making those choices consciously with a deeper understanding of the forces
At play.
that go.
Yeah. Okay, I love that so much. So, here's a challenge for you listening.
Okay.
Think back on a recent decision that you made, purely based on gut feeling.
Okay.
And now, with this newfound knowledge of the affect heuristic, how might you approach that decision differently?
Yeah.
What other factors
What other factors?
might you consider?
How could you engage
How could you engage
your system too
your system too?
to make sure you're making the choice that really aligns with
That truly aligns with your goals and values.
your goals and values? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question to think about. You know, we've been talking about how powerful this affect heuristic can be.
Yeah.
These gut feelings often kind of steer the ship
I'll call it
of our decisions.
Yeah.
But what's remarkable is how sneaky it can be.
Sneaky. Okay.
How it can influence us even when we think we're being super logical.
Like with the airport security example.
Exactly. Like, remember how people were way more on board when told it would save 98% of 150 lives
Right.
compared to just saying it would save 150 lives?
Right. It was the same number, but it felt different.
Exactly. Same numbers, different feeling.
Yeah.
And that's because the affect heuristic often works on that gut level feeling of certainty versus uncertainty.
Certainty versus uncertainty.
Right.
So is it possible, like, if just changing the way we present information can have such a powerful effect on us? Are we just walking around constantly being manipulated?
Well, manipulated might be a bit strong,
Okay.
but it's definitely true that, like, how information is presented can really mess with our judgment.
Yeah.
Even when we're dealing with cold, hard facts.
Yeah.
And you know, who understands this better than anyone?
Who?
Marketers.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Those ads with the happy families. And
Exactly. They're tapping into our emotions.
Yeah.
Trying to make us associate those warm, fuzzy feelings
Yeah.
with their product.
Yeah.
And you know what? It often works.
It does work.
Yeah.
So we're basically all swimming in a sea of messages that are designed to trigger our affect heuristic.
Yeah, pretty much.
No wonder it's so hard to make, like, rational decisions these days.
It's definitely a challenge, but the good news is
Okay.
understanding how the sneaky heuristic works can help us become more savvy consumers of information.
Okay, I like that.
So we can start to spot those emotional traps and make choices based on facts and not just feelings.
I'm all for that. How do we actually do that?
Well, the first step is simple: pay attention.
Pay attention.
Start noticing those knee-jerk reactions.
Okay.
You have to, like, everything.
To
The
everything.
news stories, products, even people you meet.
Okay.
Just ask yourself, what's fueling this reaction?
Okay.
Is it a genuine assessment based on logic and facts, or just a vibe I'm getting?
So, like, if I instantly dislike someone, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person.
Right. It could just be your affect heuristic going haywire.
That makes sense.
Yeah, our feelings aren't always wrong.
Okay.
They can be based on real experiences and intuition.
Right.
But the key is to not let those feelings completely run the show,
Especially when it comes to big decisions.
especially when it comes to big decisions.
Yeah, like buying a house or something.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
taking those feelings off autopilot
Okay.
and saying, hold on, let's see what else is going on here.
Yeah.
That's the heart of critical thinking.
Okay.
Challenging our assumptions, looking for different viewpoints,
Okay.
and questioning those initial gut reactions.
And this is where engaging that system 2 thinking comes in. That slower, more analytical side of our brains.
Right.
But how do we actually do that?
Well, one powerful strategy is to simply slow down.
Slow down. Okay.
Our emotions tend to operate much faster than our rational minds.
Okay.
So hitting the pause button can make a huge difference.
Like that urge to buy something online the second you see it versus like taking a few days to think it over.
Absolutely. In those moments when your emotions are running high, taking a step back gives your system too a chance to catch up and weigh in.
I see.
Yeah. Another helpful strategy is to think about the long-term consequences.
Okay.
Our emotions often focus on that immediate gratification, the right now.
Right.
But considering the potential future impact can help us make choices that are better for us in the long run.
Like resisting that delicious donut because you know it'll mess with your energy levels later on.
Exactly. By developing that ability to think beyond the immediate, we can make choices that are more sustainable and ultimately more fulfilling.
Delayed gratification.
There you go.
But even after we've done all that weigh the pros and cons, engaged our system 2, that gut feeling might still be nagging at us.
Well, yeah, I know that feeling.
Like my brain is at war with itself.
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Our intuition can be a powerful source of wisdom honed by years of experience.
So it's not about ignoring it altogether.
No, it's about figuring out when to trust it and when to question it.
Okay, so how do we do that? Is there like a secret formula?
I wish there was a simple answer.
Okay.
It's a constant learning process.
Okay.
But a good rule of thumb is this: the more experience you have in a particular area, the more you can generally trust your intuition.
Okay, so if you've been driving for 20 years, you can probably trust your gut when it comes to merging on the freeway.
Right.
But if you're new to investing, maybe don't bet your life savings on a hunch.
Exactly. Expertise matters.
Okay.
But even experts can fall prey to the effect heuristic.
So we all have to be careful.
The key is to be humble, to acknowledge that we all have biases, and to be willing to check ourselves
Check ourselves.
when those gut feelings start making the big decisions.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's like finding that sweet spot, trusting our intuition when it makes sense, but also knowing when to pull back
Right.
and engage those analytical brains.
Yeah. It's all about balance.
Balance.
That constant dance between intuition and logic,
Yeah.
emotion and reason.
Yeah.
And even when we mess up, when we fall victim to those emotional biases, it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
We can learn from those mistakes
Learn from our mistakes.
and use them to make better choices next time.
Okay, I like that. So it's not about being perfect,
No, not at all.
but rather about being more aware,
Yeah, more intentional
more intentional,
and more skillful in how we navigate our emotion.
in how we navigate our emotions. I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, does culture play a role in all this?
Oh, that's a great question.
I mean, could what seems like a purely personal gut reaction actually be influenced by like our cultural background?
Absolutely. Our cultural background, the values, beliefs, and norms we grow up with can definitely influence how we react emotionally,
Okay.
and in turn, how susceptible we are to the effect heuristic.
So like what might seem like a totally personal preference
Right.
could actually be rooted in like deeper cultural influences.
Exactly. For example, some cultures might value risk-taking or individualism,
Okay.
while others prioritize caution or collectivism.
I see.
These differences can shape how people perceive and respond to various risks and opportunities.
It's like how some cultures see spicy food as delicious, while others find it unbearable.
Exactly. Or how some societies readily embrace new technology while others are more hesitant.
Right? Those cultural variations can have a huge impact on how we evaluate information, make decisions, navigate the world.
A huge impact.
Yeah. Wow. So it's not enough to just be aware of our own personal biases.
Yeah.
We also need to be mindful of like the broader cultural context.
It's a great point.
It's like we're all wearing these cultural lenses
Yeah.
that color our perceptions without us even realizing it.
That's a great way to put it. And you know what?
Wow.
Understanding these cultural influences can actually be a powerful tool for bridging divides
Okay.
and building empathy between people from different backgrounds.
So instead of getting frustrated when someone sees things differently,
Right.
we can try to understand where they're coming from
Exactly.
and recognize that their perspective might be shaped by their cultural upbringing.
Right. By recognizing that Different viewpoints can be rooted in deeply held cultural values.
Yeah.
We can approach those tough conversations with more compassion and a willingness to listen and learn.
It's like shifting from that I'm right, you're wrong mentality
Right.
to a let's explore why we see things differently kind of approach.
Exactly.
That could totally change the whole dynamic of a conversation.
I think so too. And that willingness to engage with different perspectives can lead to incredible insights
Yeah.
and a deeper understanding not only of others, but of ourselves as well.
Well,
It's like expanding our own emotional vocabulary,
yeah.
becoming more fluent in the language of feelings.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually cultivate that emotional literacy, both in ourselves and in others?
Well, one of the most powerful tools we have is simply talking about our feelings more openly.
Talking about our feelings.
We often learn to bottle up our emotions,
Yeah.
but creating space for those feelings to be expressed and acknowledged can be transformative.
So it's like shining a light on those shadowy parts of ourselves.
Yeah, those feelings we might be afraid to confront.
Yeah, exactly.
And by bringing those feelings into the light, we can start to understand them better,
Okay.
see where they're coming from, and make more conscious choices about how to respond.
It's like becoming more familiar with the terrain of our own inner landscape,
Yeah,
learning to navigate those emotional hills and valleys
right.
with more skill and awareness.
You got it. And you know what? Sometimes just putting a name to a feeling can be incredibly helpful. Just saying, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling frustrated can create a sense of distance from the emotion and allow us to respond more thoughtfully.
It's like taming that wild horse of emotion
Right.
and channeling its energy into something more productive.
That's a great analogy.
And as we become more skilled at processing our own emotions, we can extend that same understanding to others.
Exactly. We can become more attuned to their emotional cues,
Yeah.
listen with more empathy, and respond with more compassion.
It's like developing a superpower.
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence, becoming more adept at reading the subtle nuances of human interaction.
You got it.
And this superpower can help us build stronger relationships, navigate conflict more effectively,
Absolutely.
and create more fulfilling lives.
It absolutely can. And another powerful tool for cultivating emotional literacy is mindfulness practice.
Mindfulness,
By paying attention to the present moment,
the present moment.
to the sensations and feelings arising within us, we can gain a deeper understanding of our own emotional landscape.
Oh, it's like creating a space between ourselves and our emotions,
Yeah.
observing them without judgment and without getting swept away by them.
Exactly. As we become more mindful, we can start to see our emotions as transient waves rising and falling like the ocean.
Right.
They don't define us. They're simply a part of our experience.
It's like shifting from that feeling of, I am my emotions,
Yeah.
to I am experiencing these emotions.
Exactly.
That feels much more empowering.
That shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It helps us detach from those unhelpful emotional patterns to break free from those reactive cycles that can keep us stuck.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming our power and becoming more intentional in how we respond to those emotional triggers.
Mindfulness sounds like a game changer.
It can be.
But does it have to be this big, complicated thing?
No, not at all.
Like, do I need to sit on a mountaintop and meditate for hours to reap the benefits?
Mindfulness can be incredibly simple.
Okay.
It can be as easy as taking a few deep breaths,
Okay.
noticing the sensations in your body, or paying attention to the sounds around you. It's about bringing that mindful awareness to those everyday moments, to the small things that make up our lives.
So it's not about escaping from life,
Right.
but rather about showing up more fully
Exactly.
with more awareness and presence. I like that.
And as we cultivate that mindful awareness, we might start to see the world with fresh eyes, appreciate the beauty around us, and connect with others on a deeper level.
It's like tuning into that subtle frequency of presence, that quiet hum of aliveness that connects us all.
Beautifully said.
And that reminds me of the power of stories
Stories.
in shaping our emotional responses
Yeah.
and influencing our decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, stories can totally make us feel things, even if they're not real.
You're so right. Storytelling is an ancient art form that's been woven into the fabric of human culture since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
It's how we understand the world, transmit knowledge, and connect with each other on a deep emotional level.
Like, think about those books or movies that have stayed with you
Yeah.
long after you finish them.
Right.
Those stories that have moved you, inspired you, or changed the way you see the world.
Precisely. Stories have this incredible ability to transport us to different worlds, evoke a whole range of emotions
Yeah.
and leave a lasting impact on our hearts and minds.
It's like they bypass our logical filters and speak directly to our souls.
Right, and that's where the connection to the affect heuristic comes in.
Okay, I see.
Stories can be incredibly effective at triggering those gut feelings, those intuitive responses that often drive our decision-making.
It's like those heart-wrenching commercials that charities use
Exactly.
to encourage donations.
They tell these powerful stories
That make us feel
that make us feel so much empathy.
so much empathy and urgency
Right, urgency.
that we're just moved to help.
You're right.
It's brilliant, but also kind of manipulative when you think about it.
It definitely can be, and that's why it's so important to be aware of the influence of storytelling,
Okay.
of how these narratives might be shaping our perceptions
Yeah.
and impacting our choices. We need to develop a critical eye, so to speak.
A critical eye. So how do we do that? How do we
Yeah.
become more savvy consumers of stories and avoid getting swept away by those emotional currents?
One helpful strategy is to pay attention to the emotional arc of the story.
The emotional arc?
Yeah, notice how the storyteller is trying to evoke certain feelings.
Okay.
Joy, sadness, anger, fear. Just ask yourself, what's the intended effect of these emotions?
Okay.
How are they shaping my perspective on the issue being presented?
It's like becoming an emotional detective looking for clues
Yes.
within the narrative.
Exactly.
Right.
And another helpful tip is to try to imagine the story being told from a different perspective.
Okay.
So if you're reading a news article,
Yeah.
try to imagine how the same events might be reported by a journalist from a different country
Okay.
or with a different political slant. It's like looking at the same painting from different angles,
I see.
getting a more complete picture.
By exposing ourselves to different narratives, we can start to dismantle those emotional biases
Yeah.
and see the issue from multiple perspectives.
Exactly.
It's like building up our resistance to those manipulative narratives that might be trying to hijack our emotions.
Right.
But what if we encounter a story that feels particularly persuasive?
Okay.
Like it's tugging at our heartstrings in a way that feels really genuine.
Yeah.
How do we know if we're being manipulated or if our emotional response is justified?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
Okay.
It's a constant process of discernment,
Of discern.
of checking in with ourselves and asking those critical questions.
Yeah.
But sometimes the best way to counteract the influence of a powerful story is to tell a different story.
To tell a different story.
Yeah, if you encounter a narrative that feels incomplete or biased, try sharing a different perspective. Offer a counter-narrative that challenges the assumptions and expands the conversation.
So it's like adding our own voice to the chorus,
Exactly.
contributing to a more nuanced and well-rounded understanding of the world.
Right. And as we become more aware of the power of storytelling, as we learn to recognize those emotional currents that can pull us in different directions,
Yeah.
we can become more conscious creators and consumers of those narratives.
Okay.
We can choose to support the stories that uplift and inspire, those that promote understanding and compassion, those that help us to see the world with fresh eyes and open hearts.
I love that it's like taking back our power
Yeah.
and using it to create a world where storytelling becomes a force for good,
Yes.
a catalyst for positive change, and a powerful tool for building a brighter and more just future.
It's a beautiful vision, isn't it?
It is.
And you know what? It all starts with that simple act of paying attention, of becoming more aware of those subtle emotional tugs that are constantly trying to steer us in one direction or another.
Okay, so we've talked about paying attention to our emotions, engaging our system to thinking, considering cultural influences, and becoming more savvy consumers of stories.
That's a lot.
It feels like we've covered a lot of ground, but I'm still wondering, how does all of this knowledge about the affect heuristic translate into practical action?
Yeah.
How can we use it to make better decisions in our everyday lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is?
And the answer is multifaceted, as you might expect.
Okay.
One of the most powerful applications of this knowledge is in the realm of risk assessment and decision-making.
Okay, risk assessment.
As we've discussed, the affect heuristic can lead us to overestimate the risks of things we fear or dislike
Right.
and underestimate the risks of things we enjoy or feel good about.
It's like that classic example of people being more afraid of flying than driving,
Exactly.
even though driving statistically is far more dangerous.
Right, so how do we counteract this bias?
Yeah, how do we do that?
One effective strategy is to seek out objective data.
Objective data.
Yeah, instead of relying on gut feelings alone.
Okay.
Let's look at the statistics, the research, the evidence-based information.
So it's like consulting a map instead of relying on our internal compass.
That's a great analogy.
which might be skewed by all those.
Which might be skewed.
Emotional biases.
Yeah, and once we have that objective data,
Yeah.
we can start to make more informed decisions.
Okay.
We can weigh the actual risks and benefits rather than letting our fears or desires call all the shots.
I see.
It's like taking a step back from that emotional roller coaster
Okay.
and making choices from a place of greater clarity and understanding.
Okay, so step one, get the facts.
Eat the facts.
But what if, even after looking at the data, those fears are still lingering?
Okay.
What if our gut is screaming danger, danger, even when the facts say otherwise?
That's where reframing comes in.
Reframing.
Sometimes shifting our perspective on the risk can make a world of difference.
Okay.
Instead of fixating on those potential negative outcomes, try emphasizing the positive benefits or potential solutions.
So it's like shifting your attention from the looming dark cloud to the silver lining.
To the silver lining hidden within
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
But how do we actually do that?
Sure, let's say you're feeling anxious about an upcoming medical procedure.
Okay.
Instead of dwelling on the potential risks or complications, try focusing on the health benefits,
Okay.
the improved quality of life you might experience afterwards.
Okay.
Or if you're hesitant about making a financial investment, shift your focus to the potential for growth or the long-term stability of the market.
So it's like consciously choosing to focus on the potential gains
Yes.
rather than the potential losses.
Exactly. It's like giving our brains a pep talk.
I like that.
Yeah.
But what if, even after all that, we're still feeling stuck?
Yep.
What if that fear is just paralyzing us?
You know, sometimes the best way to mitigate risk is to simply take action.
To take action.
Often our fears are amplified by inaction,
Okay.
by that feeling of helplessness or uncertainty.
Yeah,
It's like that saying, the only way out is through.
I've heard that.
By taking small steps, by facing those fears head on, we start to build confidence and regain our sense of agency.
It's like that exhilarating feeling of jumping into a cold lake.
Yes.
That initial shock is quickly followed by a sense of invigoration.
Exactly. By taking action, we break free from that fear and create momentum in the direction we want to go.
We become unstoppable.
There you go.
We don't have to let fear call the shots.
You got it.
We can choose to act, to move forward, even when it feels scary.
Absolutely.
But what if we make mistakes?
Okay.
What if things don't go exactly as planned? Does that mean we failed?
Absolutely. Not every misstep, every challenge we encounter can teach us something valuable.
Okay.
It helps us refine our approach, build resilience, and become more skilled at navigating the twists and turns of life.
It's like those explorers who set out to discover uncharted territory.
Yes.
They know they're likely to encounter obstacles and setbacks, but they embrace those challenges as opportunities for growth and discovery.
Exactly. And that's the true spirit of adventure, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's about embracing the unknown, stepping outside our comfort zones, and trusting in our ability to adapt and overcome whatever obstacles come our way.
It's like that famous Helen Keller quote.
Oh, yeah.
Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all.
I love that.
By embracing that spirit of adventure,
Yeah.
by taking those calculated risks, we open ourselves up to incredible possibilities
Yes.
and create a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling.
Beautifully said. And you know what? It reminds me of another amazing way we can use our understanding of the affect heuristic
Okay, what's that?
in the realm of creativity and innovation.
Creativity and innovation. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How does the affect heuristic play into those creative endeavors?
Well, as we've talked about, the affect heuristic often leads us to make decisions
Right.
based on those intuitive gut-level responses that can sometimes bypass our logical minds altogether.
It's like that sudden flash of insight, that aha moment where a brilliant idea seems to appear out of nowhere.
Exactly. Those creative breakthroughs often come from that intuitive emotional space
Yeah.
where logic and reason take a back seat.
It's like those artists, musicians, and writers who
Yeah.
describe their creative process as a kind of channeling,
Yeah.
as if the ideas are flowing through them from some mystical source.
That's a perfect description, and while we certainly need our rational minds to develop and refine those initial creative sparks,
Yeah.
it's often that initial emotional impulse, that intuitive leap that sets the whole creative process in motion.
So the affect heuristic can actually be a powerful catalyst for innovation,
Absolutely.
for those breakthroughs that push the boundaries of what's possible.
Mhm.
Who knew our emotions could be so useful?
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
And sometimes the best way to tap into that creative potential is to simply give ourselves permission to play,
To play.
to experiment, to explore without judgment or expectation.
So it's like creating a safe space for those creative impulses to emerge,
Exactly.
to let our imaginations run wild without the constraints of logic or reason.
And as we allow ourselves to play,
Yeah.
to tap into that childlike sense of wonder and curiosity, we might be surprised by the incredible ideas and solutions that emerge.
I love that it's like rediscovering that innate creativity that we all possess,
Yes.
that spark of genius that's often hidden beneath layers of self-doubt and conditioning.
Right, but sometimes those pesky emotions can also lead us to make creative decisions
Oh,
that we later regret.
yes.
I think we've all been there.
I have been there.
We get caught up in the excitement of a new idea, and our emotions cloud our judgment.
Right.
But that's all part of the creative process, isn't it?
It is.
It's about embracing the messiness, the experimentation, and even the occasional misstep.
It's not about being perfect, but
No.
rather about trusting the process,
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to make mistakes,
Right.
and learning from those experiences.
You got it. And you know what? Sometimes those mistakes end up being the most valuable part of the journey. They can lead us to unexpected discoveries, new ways of thinking, and ultimately to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our creative potential.
It's like that famous saying, we learn more from our failures than from our successes.
Exactly. And as we cultivate that creative spirit, as we learn to trust our intuition and embrace those moments of inspired insight,
Yeah.
we can transform not only our own lives, but the world around us.
It's like we're all connected in this web of creativity,
Yeah.
inspiring and influencing each other, creating a ripple effect that can spread joy, wonder, and possibility throughout the world.
And one of the most beautiful aspects of creativity is that it's contagious.
It's contagious.
When we allow ourselves to express our unique gifts and talents,
Yeah.
we inspire others to do the same.
It's like those musicians that get the whole crowd dancing and singing along,
Exactly.
or those artists whose work sparks awe and inspiration.
Right. By sharing our creative gifts,
Yeah.
by expressing ourselves authentically, we can ignite a spark in others. A spark that can lead to new ideas, new connections, and new ways of being in the world.
It's like we're all part of a grand orchestra,
Mm.
each contributing our own unique note
Yes.
to create a symphony that's greater than the sum of its parts.
I love that analogy, and it reminds me of another fascinating way the affect heuristic influences our lives
Okay, what's that?
through social connection and empathy.
Social connection and empathy.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize there was a connection between the affect heuristic
There is.
and our relationships with others. Tell me more.
Well, think about it. The affect heuristic is all about those gut feelings, those intuitive responses
Yeah.
that often shape how we interact with the world, including the people in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like that instant sense of connection we might feel when we meet someone new, or that
Right.
feeling of unease we might get in a particular social situation.
Exactly. Those intuitive responses can be incredibly valuable
Yeah.
in helping us navigate those complex social dynamics.
So it's like our internal radar system is constantly scanning the environment,
Yeah.
alerting us to potential threats or opportunities in our social circles.
That's a great way to put it. And while we definitely need our rational minds to make sense of those initial impressions,
Okay.
to gather more information and form more nuanced judgments, those gut feelings can provide valuable clues
Okay.
about who to trust, who to avoid, and how to best navigate those social situations.
So the affect heuristic can actually be a powerful tool for building strong relationships,
Absolutely.
fostering empathy, and creating a more harmonious and fulfilling social life.
It's like having a secret weapon in our social arsenal.
Its secret weapon.
But it's important to remember that it's just one tool among many.
One tool.
Right.
So how do we use this social superpower effectively?
One of the simplest yet most powerful things we can do is to pay attention to our feelings in social situations.
Okay, pay attention to our feelings.
Notice how we feel around different people in different environments. Just ask ourselves, what's causing these feelings?
Okay.
What are those subtle cues telling me?
So like becoming an emotional detective?
Yes.
Analyzing those nonverbal signals, those subtle energy shifts that can reveal so much.
Exactly. And as we become more attuned to those emotional cues,
Yeah.
both our own and those of others, we can start to communicate more effectively,
Okay.
deepen our connections, and navigate those inevitable social challenges with more grace and understanding.
It's like we're learning to speak the language of emotions, becoming more fluent in that intricate dance of connection and disconnection that shapes all of our relationships.
Beautifully said. And as we become more emotionally literate,
Yeah.
we contribute to creating a world where empathy and compassion are the guiding principles,
Yep.
where understanding and connection are the foundation for a more loving and more fulfilling human experience.
I love that vision.
Yeah.
It's like we're all weaving this tapestry of human connection thread by thread, emotion by emotion.
I love that.
But it's also important to remember that we can't pour from an empty cup.
Oh, that's so true.
We need to take care of ourselves first if we want to show up fully in our relationships.
Self-care is essential for navigating all of this.
Okay, let's talk about self-care.
Yes.
It's such a buzzword these days.
Yeah.
But what does it actually look like in practice?
Yeah.
And how does it relate to all this stuff about emotions and decision-making?
Well, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier. When we're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or depleted, our emotions tend to take over.
Yeah.
And we're much more susceptible to those emotional biases.
It's like our internal alarm system is going haywire.
Right.
Making us more likely to react impulsively and make those snap judgments based on fear or anxiety rather than logic and reason.
Exactly. So when we're running on empty, it's essential to prioritize self-care.
Self-care.
That might mean taking a break from the news, getting some exercise, spending time in nature, or simply engaging in activities that bring us joy and nourishment.
So it's like hitting the reset button on our emotional system.
Exactly. Giving ourselves a chance to kind of recharge and approach those decisions from a place of greater balance and clarity.
I like that a lot.
And another important aspect of self-care is practicing self-compassion.
Self-compassion. Okay.
We all make mistakes.
We do.
We all fall prey to the affect heuristic sometimes.
Yeah.
Instead of beating ourselves up, let's offer ourselves kindness and understanding.
So it's like being that supportive friend who's like, hey, it's okay, everyone makes mistakes.
Exactly. It's about offering ourselves that same kindness and understanding that we would offer to someone we care about.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes simply acknowledging those difficult emotions, allowing ourselves to feel them without judgment, can be incredibly healing.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be human.
Exactly. With all of our flaws and imperfections.
With all of our flaws and imperfections.
And as we cultivate that self-compassion, as we learn to be gentler and kinder to ourselves, we become more resilient, more emotionally balanced, and more capable of navigating those inevitable ups and downs of life.
It's like we're building up our inner strength, our emotional immune system, so to speak.
That's a great analogy.
So we can better handle whatever challenges come our way.
Exactly. And as we prioritize self-care, as we cultivate those practices that nourish our well-being, we become more resilient to the influence of the affect heuristic.
Okay.
We're able to approach those decisions from a place of greater strength, clarity, and wisdom.
It's not just about understanding the affect heuristic, like intellectually.
No.
It's about embodying that knowledge and integrating it into our daily lives.
Exactly. It's about creating a life that feels good, a life that's aligned with our values, our aspirations, and our deepest desires.
And by doing so, we not only make better choices for ourselves, but we inspire others to do the same.
You got it. It's like that ripple effect.
Ripple effect.
When we prioritize our own well-being, when we make choices from a place of love and compassion, we create a positive impact that extends far beyond ourselves.
I love that so much. Well, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how my mind works.
That's great to hear.
And I'm excited to start putting this knowledge into practice.
Yeah, this is just the beginning.
Oh, is there more?
There's so much more to discover about how this fascinating mental shortcut operates, how it influences our lives in countless ways, and how we can harness its power for good.
So where do we go from here? What are like the big unanswered questions about the affect heuristic?
Well, one area of ongoing research is trying to understand the neurological basis of the affect heuristic.
Oh, wow. So like the brain science behind it.
Yeah, how do our brains generate these gut feelings? What brain regions are involved? And can we actually see the affect heuristic at work using brain imaging techniques?
It's like we're trying to peek under the hood of our own minds to see the machinery of emotion and decision-making in action.
Exactly. And another exciting area of research is exploring how the affect heuristic might be implicated in a wide range of social and political phenomena.
Okay.
Like, how does it influence our voting behavior, our attitudes towards different social groups, our willingness to cooperate or compete?
So it affects like all these different areas of our lives.
It really does. It has profound implications for understanding how we make sense of the world and how we interact with each other.
It's like this hidden puppet master pulling strings behind the scenes.
Kind of, yeah.
Of so many aspects of our lives.
But here's the good news.
Okay.
We're not just puppets.
Okay.
We can become aware of these strings
Okay.
and learn to move a little more freely.
I like that.
So while we can't entirely escape the influence of the affect heuristic,
Right.
we can definitely become more aware of it and learn to navigate its influence more skillfully.
So it's not about eradicating our emotions
No, not at all.
or becoming like a robot.
It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot,
That sweet spot.
where we honor our feelings while also engaging our rational minds. It's
Okay.
about integrating those two aspects of ourselves, the emotional and the rational, so they can work together in harmony.
And when we can do that,
Yeah.
we become more whole, more integrated, and more capable of living a life that's aligned with our truest selves.
Beautifully said. I love that.
Me too. This has been such a fascinating deep dive
Yes.
into the world of the affect heuristic.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned so much,
Me too.
and I'm really excited to continue exploring these ideas.
It's a fascinating field.
It is.
And there's always more to learn.
So to wrap things up for our listeners,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways that you want them to remember?
Well, first of all, remember that the affect heuristic is a powerful force in our lives.
Okay.
It shapes our perceptions, our decisions, and even our relationships.
It's everywhere.
It is, but we're not helpless.
Okay.
We can become more aware of its influence and make more conscious choices
By paying attention
by paying attention,
to our gut feelings.
by slowing down,
Slow down.
by seeking out objective data,
Objective day.
and by practicing self-care and self-compassion.
Okay, those are great takeaways.
And remember, every choice, every decision is an opportunity to create the life you truly desire.
That's such a powerful reminder. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the affect heuristic. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring this topic with you.
It's been a pleasure being here.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.
Until then, keep those brains buzzing.